good morning, or would it be good afternoon, or possibly good evening? Either way, wherever you're at, whether they're time zone or country, welcome. My name is Emily Pittsford, and you may have never heard of me, but I have been known to speak here and there and on gender confusion. But I thought I would mix things up today, and we would do something a little different. And we're, by the titles and mission, we're going to be speaking about the Jezebel spirit and how she's playing havoc in the world today. And for no extra charge, and for a limited time only, you're also going to hear about Ahab and Leviathan, because they do tend to go together. So I'm real excited that you chose to watch this one by somebody that you probably never heard of. Like I said, just a little bit about my background. I was born in Hawaii, and my name is Emily Lorraine, and I think those two things are amazing because I love Emily Lorraine and being born in Hawaii. Those are the only two things that did not land me in therapy. Other than that, life is good. I live in San Diego, California, obviously, and with my husband. We have two little miniature dachshunds. We were married in 1979 and still married today. That's why I said my husband. We have basically 2 children together. I will tell more about that later. And also, right there, up to there looks normal. But my story vicariously goes all the way to the White House and the Supreme Court, which I will thread in throughout the speech. In other words, it's a teaser. So I look forward to speaking to you today, and it's all His glory if you get anything out of it. I do want to do some housekeeping first. One, I think it would be a really good idea to get paper and pencil. And it's not that I think I'm going to say anything all that profound, but I know it is when I listen to speeches that I think, yeah, no, I don't need to take notes. And sometimes they say something I'm not sure about or whatever, and I do tend to be a squirrel person. So since I've been awake since 2005, where God told me to go Google Freemasons and Art Link Letter, and I joke, I have not stopped since. And during that course of that time, I found out that I had memories of being abused by the Freemasons when I was 3. My father was a Freemason of those lovely Blue Lodge buildings, and he took me in and they put me on the altar and hoodwinked me and performed rituals. And on the scale of satanic ritual abuse, it's way over here, but it still affects me. And if anything, I get to see things other people don't see, because I see things differently than most. And the other piece of housekeeping is that clock, I took the battery out. So, like if you're watching me 20 minutes ago, what time is it? Don't worry about the clock. I just don't want to have to worry about it when I was editing. So anyway, with no further ado, I would like to share with you about Jezebel, hence the name of the speech. So you might be asking, well, wait a minute, Emily. How could somebody that lived centuries ago affect us today? You're not like a ghost hunter, are you? Well, no. You see, Jezebel is talked about in 1 Kings, but she's also mentioned in Revelation. In Revelations 2, God warns the church, hey, you're a great church, except for you doing one thing really wrong. You are tolerating the spirit of Jezebel. Tolerance. In the mid-90s, that was the in word. We were to tolerate everybody. Well, if you look it up in the dictionary, tolerance means to put up with bad behavior. Ultimately, tolerance will eat the good. You know, it might feel like the right thing, right? We want to be nice, we want to be about grace and good Christians and love and mercy and all of that. Obviously, this is pretty important because the church was reprimanded for it. So to find out more about Jezebel, let's go back to where she originated, and that is 1 Kings. First, I'd like to start with King Ahab, though. And that is a king that ruled over Israel 135 years after King David. And if you took all of the evil of all of the kings in the 135 years and you did this, and you went over to Ahab and went, Ahab would still be more evil than all of the evil before him. He was that bad. Well, he decided to marry Princess Jezebel of the Sidonians. Now, you might be thinking, what's the big deal about that? Well, her dad, King Ethbal of the Sidonians, they named their names with Baal in it, B-A-A-L. It's a false god, really bad dude. And so they were worshipers of him. Well, God tells his people, do not marry outside of your faith. You bring in women or men, vice versa. If you bring your spouses in and they worship false gods, you're going to be tainted. It's going to affect you. You think you can override it? Most likely not, because God warns about it. So anyway, he marries this woman and he brings her to the kingdom. She brings with her 950 false prophets from her kingdom. That is a lot of false prophets. And she even kills some of God's prophets. This woman was a murderess. Well, the story I'm going to concentrate on is when King Ahab looks over his field and he sees another one nearby. So he wants it. Not a bad thing. So he goes over to the owner, Naboth, and he says, dude, I'd really like to buy your field. And he says, I can't, man. And he says, well, I will pay you, or we can trade. He says, no, no, no. This has been in my family forever. I can't give it up. It is mine. So Ahab went back home. And he pouted. He went to bed. He did not eat. I don't know about you, but I have two phases or ways I'm upset. Either I eat like crazy. I don't now because I don't do that anymore, but I used to. And then, or I don't eat at all if I'm really, really, really upset, like immovable. Like when my son died. I knew I had to eat a certain way to keep myself going, but I just really had a hard time eating. So, Queen Jezebel says, do not worry about this. You go eat. I'll take care of it. So, she writes a letter. We really don't know what all the letter said, but she writes a letter and she signs her husband's name. One of the things that she's going to do, and she puts her seal on it, or excuse me, Ahab's seal. One of the things about Jezebel, they don't really have power, so they go on to people who they think have power. So she gets two of her stooges, or flying monkeys, as some people call them, to do her dirty work. So they go and they tell Naboth they are going to exalt him. They're having a party just for him. And so he goes, and then these two stooges, or flying monkeys, stand up and say, we have got things against this man. And they each witness the same thing. Well, they took full advantage that the Hebrew faith says we need 2 or 3 witnesses. So they're like, okay, it must be true. So they take Naboth and they stone him to death. The dogs lick his blood. It's not a good thing. I mean, Ahab gets his field, but Elijah comes in and he says, yeah, Ahab, this is really not a good deal. Here's what's going to happen. He says, your wife's going to die and the dogs are going to lick their blood. So sure enough, she's in the balcony one day and Elijah looks up and goes to the guys behind her, like, do it. And they push her over the balcony and she dies a horrific death and the dogs lick her blood. See, most times, if not all times, the punishment fits the crime. Interesting, isn't it? So what can we learn from this? Well, we can learn a lot. One, this is codependency. This is when a wife decides to take over her husband's role. You see, Jezebel and Ahab are a perfect example of a couple of what not to do. And so instead of letting him deal with his sin, because he was coveting, it's a commandment, thou shalt not covet. He was coveting, instead of saying, you know what, that's a bummer. You know, too bad. So sad, too bad. Too bad, so sad. And no, she fixed it. How many wives fix their husband's alcoholism or whatever it is, and they cover up for them, and they make things easier? But in the end, they'll keep doing it again and again. In fact, in Proverbs 19, it talks about that. If a person's angry, they got to deal with it. And if they're rescued, it's going to happen again and again. And that's a codependency. Because we only learn from our consequences. When our consequences are greater than the energy it takes to change, we're going to change. We're going to take the lesser of the two. It's much easier to change than deal with that consequence. But that's not what happened. So she took over his role. We can also learn from Naboth. He was exalted. He went to this party for him to be exalted. How easy is that to do, right? When people tell us that they love us and like us and they give us all these compliments, that's actually what a Jezebel does. And by the way, a Jezebel, and especially a Leviathan, we'll get to in a minute, that's narcissism. And anybody that knows anything about narcissism will tell you there's always a love-bombing phase, and that's exactly what she did to Naboth. And then what they do is they find a weakness. Now they lied. It was an out and out lie. But if they find a weakness, they will threaten to expose you. Because they will do anything to win. Anything. Also, we can learn something is that Ahab's desire was convenience. A king always wants the best. He wants it to be easy. He doesn't want to have to work for his things or, food or whatever. He wants it to be easy. See, it worked in the relationship because she did what he should do, so he didn't have to do it. So he could sit back and let his wife do everything. But he wasn't taking his role. Again, this is a marriage based on what not to do. We are supposed to be husband and wife and then the children. The husband is supposed to do the discipline, and when that doesn't take place, it doesn't work the other way when the mother almost has to step up. We see this in churches where the mothers are taking the kids to church and the dad stays home. That's possibly, I can't say every time, I've not interviewed everybody, but that could be a Jezebel spirit working in there. So you might think, well, how do we get these spirits? Because they're spirits. We shouldn't have ghosts upon us. Well, they are downloadable, and I'll tell you how. So in 2 Kings 2:15, they talk about Elijah's spirit being put upon Elijah. So hence, it's downloaded quickly. Gets it done. God's efficient. But Satan only can copy, so he copies this. So he puts in spirits to other people. Well, I don't want you to worry. I mean, you're not going to be walking along and go, whoa, I think I just got hit by a Jezebel. It doesn't work that way. But I will tell you the ways that it can happen. The first way is that you can be born with one. So unfortunately, it does feel like in a way you could be hit with one. But see, Satan has a right to unconfessed sin. Something they don't teach you in church. It can go back 3rd or 4th generation, unfortunately. And so let's just say, well, let me preface it a little bit more. So the firstborn child tends to get the spirit of the dad. And the firstborn child gets double blessings so that they can ultimately take care of their parents as they age. But that also means a lot of times curses can be the same, and you get more curses with the firstborn because they end up getting kind of watered down as they go through if there's more and more children. So the firstborn can be sometimes the most defiant. So let's just say a dad that was beaten down by his mother with a Jezebel, who can't see it, then has a daughter first. And the wife is extremely frustrated because this child never listens, and she does it her own way, and she is very headstrong, obstinate. There's just no controlling her, no matter how hard she tries. And she asks her husband for help, but he just can't do it. Maybe he didn't even have a dad. And so he doesn't know how to discipline. And like I said before, the discipline comes from the dad. Spiritually speaking, if it comes from the mom, it's a mess. It is a mess. And then let's say they have another child, and that child, generally speaking, the second child will have the spirit of the mom. And he'll be more docile. Maybe it's an Ahab spirit then. And even though the Ahab spirit could be just as evil, but still. And so then they're real close. And it's just, it's pretty much dysfunction 101. And again, it's what not to do. Because this daughter especially, and they wrap their daddies around their finger, will grow up without knowing what a consequence is. And she will continue to get away with murder. Maybe not physical murder, but murder of the hearts. And that's what they love to do. They love to manipulate, control, etc. So trauma is another way. I want you to think of an umbrella with the word trauma on it. So I'm going to share with some of the things that can create trauma. Obviously, satanic ritual abuse, sexual abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, a car accident, a divorce, your parents get divorced, that's trauma. All of a sudden you're going this way and they sit you down and they say, guess what, Mommy and Daddy really love each other, but just not in the same house. But we love you, but we're going to divorce now. That's traumatic. Those are things that cause a shock to the soul and fear to set in. And when fear sets in, the enemy then has a right to that child to bring demons forth. I wish I had better news for you, but this is how it works. And so then ultimately, for various reasons and in different ways, fear, in order to get rid of fear, instead of being taught to confess it, rely on Jesus and to pray about it when you're little, no, many times that does not happen. In fact, most times it does not. And so you're left with this hole in your heart and this fear, and you don't know why you're so afraid of everything. And so enters Leviathan. Leviathan is a principality. He's the kingpin, some say, to Jezebel and Ahab and probably Delilah and a few others. But either way, he is the king of pride. We all know that. And so he twists everything. And so the child starts twisting everything that they do. You can't get a straight answer. And they'll pick on one thing that's wrong and blow every, and they just want to focus on that. And you're like, but it doesn't matter in this instant. And then they just go on and on and on, because that's what Leviathan does. If you want to know about Leviathan, go into a Flat Earth Facebook page. All the arguments just going round and round and round and round. Especially when somebody comes in and goes, but why would they lie? They never want to hear the truth, do they? I've been there. I had to finally leave. So anyway, and so what happens also, you'll make oaths. You will make promises so that you will never have to go through that again. Let's say a little girl is sexually abused by her dad or her uncle, whomever, but a man. And so she says, I'm going to never be attractive. And what if the mother is always screaming at her and says, you will make a horrible mother, or I hope that you will have a daughter just like you? Horrible thing to say. And so the child might say, well, I'm never having children then. I don't want to ever have to, deal with that. If there's a divorce, maybe a little girl would say, especially if the father leaves the home, well, obviously they will, but I mean, as far as leaving the relationship and emotionally abandoning the daughter, she might say, I will never rely on a man again. There's all sorts. There's an innumerable amount of oaths that people can make. Right now, though, I want to show you the queen, I think, of Jezebel, or the most popular Jezebel in the world, and that would be Scarlett O'Hara. And let's watch what she does.
Witness, they're not going to lick me. I'm going to live through this, and when it's all over, I'll never be hungry again. No, nor any of my folk. If I have to lie, steal, cheat, or kill, as God is my witness, I'll never be hungry again.
So, as you can see, she made an oath. She promised to sin in order to never be hungry again. And that's what an oath is about. When I was in labor with my second child, and we knew he was a boy, and my husband always wanted a boy. Long story, but he always wanted a boy, and so, his whole life. And I didn't want any more labor pains. I was kind of done. And I grabbed onto the rails and I said, no more. Well, they thought I actually meant labor pains, but really what I meant was no more children, even if it's a girl, no more. I don't want to do this again. And I wonder sometimes, that oath that I made, because you see, an oath will make an automatic path. That's a good one to write down, actually. I was actually writing oath to somebody, like the word, and spell check made it into path, and I thought, that's pretty interesting, the oath. turned into a path. And so I have the loss of my son. He would have been 38 today. And he died 10 years ago, September 7th. I was able to write a book about the experience. And we have a daughter, and she has the largest gay community in the world. She has like 180,000 followers just on Facebook alone. She does these seminars in San Francisco and New York twice a year. She's done about 12. Right now she's just doing them online. September 2018, she interviewed Hillary Clinton. This year, about a couple months ago, I think in June, she interviewed Nancy Pelosi. And what is her name? Oh yeah, Kamala Harris. So she is very much into this politically as well. She's been on the cover of magazines. She did 3 seminars at the White House. And when she did one of her seminars, I met this woman named Edie Windsor. And she was the woman that made gay marriage legal in the whole country at the Supreme Court. Hence why my story goes that far up. But I was able to hand her a book about my son, or the book about my son, and she loved it. And she was a great woman. Unfortunately, she was pulled into the wrong arena. She passed away September of 2018, I believe, and I was sad. I mean, I really grieved for her. It's a sad ending to her life, unless she confessed at the end. Could have. But either way, my daughter is, I used to say a rock star. She's an icon in this. But I have total faith that she will come back. So, another way that this can happen, that these spirits come on, and it's called dissociative identity disorder. And that is when a child is traumatized. Usually a child, could be an adult as well. And it's like if you took a piece of glass, it's like if you took a hammer to a piece of glass, and you went like this, and this shard breaks off. And you went like that, and a shard breaks off. These pieces are gifts from God, because if we did not have them, that would mean we would either die from the shock, or we would be in a padded room for the rest of our lives. And let me tell you something, there were days I'd like to have done it. Joking aside, 2005, when I mentioned I woke up, I also woke up to my suppressed memories. And so hence, I am like many people. In fact, most people have these. I do have parts, which I really hate saying, because this could go out to thousands of people, and I am definitely taking a risk. Because if my daughter sees this, which I'm kind of hoping she will, she could make me for life. But being that she does not speak to me, I don't have anything to lose. She has a little girl through, rent-a-dad, and but I still have faith, because I really miss her, and I have faith in God that He will bring this all back together. So, back to DID. Now that I've confessed to the whole world about this, one of the things I want to share, this is in the Bible as well. Paul. We all know this verse because it's kind of hard to understand, right? It doesn't make any sense. People have used this verse to probably explain the globe, channeling. I mean, I don't think anybody really knows what to do with this until I read this book on DID, and it used this verse, and I thought, oh my gosh, I think this is it. So let me read it to you, if you don't mind. I do have notes down here, and this is there's an ironing board here. This way I can have my notes with me, because it's a lot to remember, and I want to get things as, see, when you have parts, you learn ways to get organized. Okay, so this is the verse in 2 Corinthians 2. I know a man in Christ who was caught up to the third heaven 14 years ago. Remember how I said the punishment usually fits the crime? Did Paul not stone or be part of stoning Christians? He was stoned maybe 14 years ago, and that's what he's speaking of. Whether he was in the body or out of the body, I don't know, but God knows. I know that this man, whether in the body or out of the body, I don't know. Reorganizing my papers. But God knows. Was caught up into paradise. I know of somebody personally that because of the trauma, during the trauma that they were suffering, they went to heaven. This is not uncommon if you look into Russ Dizdar stuff, or anybody that has any knowledge of DID. This is very common, that God takes us out when necessary. He heard inexpressible words. He's talking about his part, which a man is not allowed to speak. They say that angels are talking and singing in such a way that we can't really reiterate. It's above our heads until we, quite frankly, pass on. He says, I will boast about this person, but not about myself. So he's speaking about another person, except of my weaknesses. This could very well be him saying about his parts. You see, David was split too. He says in Psalms that he had a split soul. My soul has split. It's probably went to Saul. But this is not uncommon. In fact, it's more common than common. It's very common. Most people have them. So don't be scared. Don't be scared. But what I learned from this is that, one, God heals. I will heal the brokenhearted. And also, you can have different spirits attached to each part. So I would love to tell you to go home. I was thinking Zach Bauer when I said that. Go home and read your Bible. That too. But you'll probably be thinking, wait a minute, I have had some trauma. And sometimes I forget things and lose my keys. And sometimes I feel scattered. And sometimes I get upset and I feel like I can't function. I would love to tell you that all you have to do is go home and start, or you're probably are home, but you just need to start confessing them. That's how this started for me. But I know of people that have confessed these spirits and it has backfired. So please be very prayerful and write letter, journal it out. Talk to God. This is my advice to you, but please be careful. So either way, we are now left with this society that has been through. If a television program could probably split people. Because, they see murders on the video games and the television and movies, and it's everywhere. It's absolutely everywhere, this type of trauma. And so hence, what are we to do with that? It's like a total dance trying to figure this out. And unless you know what's going on, you're not going to be able to do so. But one thing it does create for sure is gender confusion. Because the man is not in charge. And so the child instinctively knows that the husband/father is supposed to be in charge of all of the family. And when this doesn't take place, the children know, and it creates double-mindedness. Feminism. Feminism is so evil and so Jezebel. They rather take care of themselves and go to work. They don't want to be slaves to their family, but they go to work to be slaves for IBM and Chevron and whomever. But they don't want to be a slave to their family. So, it's much better to be a slave to either employer. In society, pride and gender confusion. Pride cometh before a fall. Do you know in every society? Okay, I don't know about every, but this is what I've heard. The last thing that happens before a society crumbles, generally speaking, homosexuality is normalized. And right now we're seeing pedophilia normalized. Abortion, birth control. Women, just because you didn't walk through an abortion clinic, if you use birth control, it's the same thing. You're stopping a pregnancy that is a murderous spirit. Lawlessness. This is definitely a time of lawlessness. Quite frankly, it's most likely going to get worse. We have put aside the whole Bible. We don't need that part. We don't need the beginning. But right now, in my opinion, what's going to happen is the whole Bible is literally coming up from the ground. We might see Canaanites. We might see more of the Nephilims. But we have put aside the whole Bible. We've not wanted to deal with that part because that's ugly. There's like Moloch and child sacrifice, and we know we're too civilized right now. Really? What do you think abortion is? That's child sacrifice. I call it civilized barbarianism right now. We all sit around at dinner parties telling each other how wonderful we are and how bad these people are over here, et cetera, thinking we're just so wonderful. All the while children are getting abused beyond comprehension. We could see the Canaanites very easily in this time. We're going to see more healings. We're going to see also more maybe dead being raised from the dead. It's going to be interesting, to say the least, but definitely lawlessness. So how do you know somebody has these spirits? First of all, don't always point your fingers. You too could have these spirits. But either way, let's talk about the symptoms. High childhood trauma, most likely. You just should count on it, honestly. Look at people's faces. You can tell. Do I look okay when I say that? But seriously, we need to see other people's faces. This is why God made a face, so we could tell if that person is safe or not. You know, you see some people and you're like, oh, they're angry. They're too sexualized. They're too this. They're too wimpy. They're this. They're that. A lot can be said by looking at somebody's face and telling, because you can usually tell if they're a safe person. Not always, but usually. Voice. A Jezebel spirit will be very seductive. They will bring you in to their web. Some call black widows, some call Jezebels a black widow. And it's very true. They get people in their web by love bombing, telling them how wonderful they are, then finding out secrets about them, and then exposing them. This is what a Jezebel does. And she loves to have a lot of people in her web, so that way they can go out and do her dirty work, and she doesn't have to. Now I'm going to shift gears. I've taught you some things about these spirits and kind of what to look for, and now I want to shift gears to the masks. I would love to take the time to share with you on the history, but I did put a video up on my YouTube page, and stuff that you can get anywhere, I'd rather send you over there. So I would like to talk about the fact that they are used in satanic rituals. There's a movie called Ruth. It's so cheesy, but I watched it on Purim, and half of it was, you know, fiction probably, or most likely. In fact, it was. It was made in 1960. Totally cheesy. Like all the colors, you know, and everything was just really kind of funny. But anyway, they talked about the Moabites a lot because, you know, as most people know, Ruth was a Moabite. And they watched this little girl. What finally triggered Ruth to come out of the Moabites, fictionally, was watching this little girl that she had been training. She was like maybe 6. Go up the steps, kind of like that Inca pyramid in Mexico. I think there's another name, but you know what I mean with the steps. And they put her on the altar, and they put a veil over her face. I myself just had said, I was hoodwinked. They put a mask, a hood, over my face, so I could not see. I will try to put some pictures as I edit of people in satanic rituals. You think of the movie Eyes Wide Shut. They wore masks. Some might say, but Emily, what about surgery? They wear them in surgery because they have to be, you know, clean, right? No germs. There's this one video that Liz Bailey had put up and found on my Facebook page, Emily L. Pittsford. We'll talk about that at the end. But I put my fringe stuff and things like that up there, and things I want people to go to because I couldn't download it for a YouTube video. I'm sure others have tried, but we've all failed. But what's nice about this website, is it has a lot of their resources too. So it's very clean. It's not angry at people that wear masks and such like that, but it's all of these scientific studies that they've done, and they can't even find proof that in a surgery you need the mask. There's no proof that there's less infections because of a mask. So other than when I spray paint, I can't really see anything good that's come from a mask, because it's taken away you. It's taken away your emotions. You can no longer see if that is a safe person. It's dehumanizing us. And what have they done with abortions? It's not a baby, it's a fetus. What did they do in Nazi Germany? They dehumanized the Jews. When I first woke up in 2005, the first 2 things I learned were, 1, World War II, probably all wars, but World War II was just the black magic, which was Germany, and the white magic, which was the United States. That's all it was. Kind of, I think of like the white hat and black hat, right? That's something to write down. Anyway, we'll move back. We'll come back. So that's really what these wars are about. And the second thing was, Nazi Germany was a practice run. If you're watching this, you might be enough awake that you have seen some horrific videos already. Like this one woman, she's yelling at these children, telling them that you're going to die because they're not wearing a mask. Is that the worst? I mean, talk about traumatized children. I myself have been grabbed at a grocery store because I was trying to go in with a mask. I did. He let go because I started screaming. I've been screamed at, called names, told that I'm selfish, etc., etc. This is an interesting time, is it not? To think that just by being a human being, you are looked down upon. We are looked down upon. And they masked me at 3 years old. I will never be masked. This is my hill. This is my hill. Health concerns. We all know that it's not a good idea to take in anything of your body that leaves your body, and I don't think I have to say much more. We want those things to leave. In fact, God even makes ways to dig holes and to anything that leaves our body to go in the holes. But now it's okay to breathe this in. We're seeing cases and cases of where people have all of this infection all over their face. And now there's a new term called dental mouth, I think. No, mask mouth. Makes more sense. They're going to the dentist and they have this horrific bad breath. Yeah, because all the toxins and the bacteria is going right back in there. And I'm not going to elaborate on all the other things, but social distancing. Do you know that our heart has a radius of electricity of 6 feet? That's why they want you to stand 6 feet apart. Your immune system is better off when you're closer together. You can talk to each other, communicate. We're supposed to be in community. And no, they locked us away. Told us that this was so dangerous, and yet nobody I've seen has dropped dead on the street. I believe the second wave, though, could be from these people breathing in all of their own carbon dioxide. I don't think that's a far stretch, but we'll see. So this is basically about control. This is about seeing who will comply. Oh, and people will send me texts of funny masks, memes. Yeah, not funny to me, just so you know. That's not funny. It's not funny when I see y'all saying, well, if you had to wear a mask, what would it be? And everyone's showing. No, it's not funny. If we stood up today, everybody that watches this, and figures out ways that they can use exemptions or the law or the Constitution or whatever it is and stand up to these people, there's a possibility we could get our country back. I think it's more important to repent. But speaking of that, let's talk about what's going on spiritually with these people. As I mentioned before, fear turns into pride. And so when these people were watching CNN 24/7, they became fearful because the media even confesses that they do these stories in such a way to make you scared. And so they were riveted to the television. Oh, what's the numbers now, George? I don't know. Ethel, what is it today? I don't know, but the numbers look like they're going up. I was having my house fixed a couple months ago by this wonderful crew, and they were all awake. It was just fantastic to have them over every day. And if they weren't awake, I woke them up, of course. But anyway, the foreman was awake, and he was doing another job, and he said at one point when this couple was watching television 24/7 on a split screen, no less, so they got it on both sides. Well, the guy did this, and his mask slipped. They called him and said, we're going to get the COVID, we're going to get the COVID. It's like, oh my gosh. Did you know that a virus is part of our immune system? We need these viruses. They purge out the toxins. If you're sick, it's because you most likely have too much crud in your system. Okay, so back to fear. I went on a rant. The fear turns to pride. And it's like, because of the television watching, they're in the static of the television. Remember the movie Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? I saw the first one. I never saw the second one. Too creepy. But I saw the first one as a kid, and so I went back and I found a still shot, maybe a film, if I can get it on in time, of Willy Wonka and TV mic. Like TV microphone, TV mic.
Results.
Look at me! I'm gonna be the first person in the world to be sent by television!
Hey, get away from that thing!
Stop, don't come back.
Lights, camera, action!
Mike! Where are you?
He's up there, in a million pieces.
Mike! Are you there?
Too much sound in here. Watch the screen.
Mike! Why is he taking so long?
A million pieces take a long time to put together.
As you can see, this static up here, and I don't know if you know the story, but all of these little spoiled kids, probably traumatized too, but it's fictional. They went into, they got the candy bars with the golden ticket, and they all went in to see if they could end up owning the chocolate factory, unbeknownst to them. And so he was testing all of these kids. So the one with the purest heart got the chocolate factory, bottom line. Sorry, spoiler alert. But this one kid was TV Mike, and he loved television. He had his cowboy guns. He was in a cowboy outfit because in the 50s and 60s, it was all cowboys stuff on television. You know, the good guys wore the black hats, excuse me, white hats, and the bad guys wore the black hats, supposedly. So he's really into television, and he's talking about how they can transport the chocolate bars through the television and end up, and little Mike, or TV Mike, gets caught up in the static. What a great visual. That's exactly what's happening. If the television died tomorrow, or we turned it off, we could all go back to normal. I don't think that's going to happen. I personally think this is like Jeremiah. Read Jeremiah. You're going to see some similarities. I believe our country is most likely going to go down. There's some that believe that people are going to save us. I'm not one of them. But either way, let's get back to the masks. You know how when you're talking on social media and you might say something you normally wouldn't have said? Especially in a flat earth, you know, discussion? This is what happens with a mask. They can say whatever they want. It doesn't matter. They can call you names. They can be mean. They can be brutal. They can be bullies. They can hit you. There's one man that died. I know of at least one. I think there's another one that at least was hit and thrown to the ground. Because people are so frustrated at us because we're not saving lives. This is a narcissist. This is a narcissist act. They want me to lose my oxygen. They want you to lose your oxygen so they can be safe. It's kind of like vaccinations, is it not? Gee, if those vaccinations work so well, why do you care if I get them or not? What is it to you? You're protected, aren't you? Same with the mask. You're protecting yourself, so protect. Knock yourself out. I mean that literally. Knock yourself out. But don't make me wear one. This is insanity right now. Our leaders. This is one to write down if you've never heard of the Nephilim. Go to Genesis 6 or Google it, YouTube it, and the Nephilim. The Nephilim are created beings when demons came down, according to Genesis 6, and they mated with the women. And they created this race of high up people. So the elite, the famous people, the people that were worshipped, the celebrities, the politicians. Well, those were giants in those days. David and Goliath. Goliath was a giant, was he not? That's what was really going on. And so those are the Canaanites. Those were, I don't want to say too many names that might not be it, but usually with ites, except for the Israelites, obviously. Those were the Nephilim. And so people will think that there's two different gods, Old Testament and New Testament. In fact, one guy did that, I think, in 200. And he loved Paul, but just knew that it was two gods. The horrible God that killed people, and the good God through Jesus. So he's the one that actually separated the book. But either way, we tend to think that God was horrible in those days when he told the Israelites to go kill people. I mean, it does sound challenging. They were the Nephilim. That's why. He wanted his people to be safe, to be free from them. But guess what? We still got them here. They're now called hybrids. They hate us with an absolute passion. Because you see, we are made in the image of God. So every time they look at our faces, they are reminded of him. But here's the thing. Their faces are actually demonic. Scales. Disgusting looking. They look like a demon. Because they are demons. Kind of like in Lord of the Rings. I didn't really care for the movie, but I remember, precious, precious. Demonic. So they look horrible, but they love it because that's who they are. They want to share with us. It's like Tom Cruise's character in A Few Good Men when he says, he was about to put Jezebel on the stage, or he was telling Demi Moore's character he was going to put him on the stage, and he's like, I think Jezebel wants to tell the truth. That's exactly what's happening with these creatures. They really do want to tell us, but they can't. And they hate that they're covered in human flesh. Why? Because we are created in His image. And so they hate because they are masked, which is exactly what they're doing to humans. So they don't have to look at them. And they are doing everything in their power to keep people masked. But I believe it's like when Tom Cruise's character is yelling at Demi Moore's character and saying,
Thank you for playing. Should we or should we not follow the advice of the galactically stupid?
we are following them. Well, not me, to my best of my ability. But people are loving it. The thing, and I am not a Republican Democrat person. I just don't like any of it. But my kids, I lost my kids in college when they went to school, and they became liberal. I didn't raise them that way. I mean, we made a lot of mistakes, but we didn't raise them liberal. And you see the professors tell the kids, your parents were just delusional. God's not real. He's just there to make people feel better. We're going to change the world because they were wrong. And so these kids, they're indoctrinated for 3-4 years about how they're going to change the world. That's why all these liberals think it's okay about everything that's going on, because it's all about changing the world. Well, guess what happens before communism comes in? Just saying. They tear things down. They burn things up. They have to start over. And that's what their mentality is. Again, not to pit Republicans and Democrats together against each other. So, why are some people targeted from this, with the Jezebel spirit? They're groomed. Like I said, they're set up. They're love bombed. They're told how wonderful they are. They're usually in a position that's higher than them, and they feel that they can suck the energy out of them and then use their position to gain power. Loving, you can still love them, but with boundaries. And that's not exactly easy. I find how to deal with this is that I remove myself. David, when he figured out Saul was so bad and Saul was after to kill him. Now Saul was before Jezebel, so obviously this spirit probably was around before that, because there was obviously murder. Cain kind of started it. Anyway, so David hid, and that's what I do. Back away. And I let it all unfold. Especially if it's in a group, it always shows itself. And people will say, Emily, why didn't you tell me? Like, because you had to experience it for yourself. I have learned so much from just experience. My dad always said experience was the best teacher. And so that's what he did. And then he was still, you know, he had an opportunity to kill Saul in the cave when Saul went in there to relieve himself. David could easily have taken him, and he didn't. He still loved him, even though then he loved him from afar, because he knew that his intent was evil. And so he emotionally was able to stay away then. It's like you have to lick your wounds for a while. You can't just keep on the offensive. And honestly, they usually don't get it anyway. And to know if you're around one, just tell them no. Just tell them you're not sure if you can do this for them, and you're not going to promise, and they will go ballistic. They hate to be said no to. And that's a key of a good relationship, if you could say no and it's still a relationship. How to heal. We're working on that one. I'm not going to lie, I'm still in process. I have a wonderful counselor right now, and praise the Father, and we're working through a lot of things. And it's funny, when I would go into counseling through the years, and they would say, what do you want? I'd say, I want to be whole. Little did I know. Because I've only known for a year. And so I'm sure my last counselor would be like, I can't believe you're talking about it, and I am praying that nobody uses this against me. But if they do, they do. If they do, they do. I am not going to hide in the cave anymore. So this is the part of the speech where I say thank you for watching. And this is the part, let's say if it was an interview, they'd say, and how can people get a hold of you? Well, right now, don't. You actually can, but I've got boundaries now. So, just so you know. Anyway, I have a blog, and Liz Bailey said herself she could spend all day on the blog. And what I do love about my blog, I'm not self-exalting, but because of the subject matter, Procter & Gamble's probably not going to come in and pay me to put advertisements, so I will never make a penny off of it. So that way you're not going to get pop-ups, which are so annoying to people that have had trauma, let me tell you. And you're going to be able to read some fun stories and some fringe stuff. I've got stuff on there on trannies, etc. And my friend said no more ums. I gotta stop with the ums. But anyway, the last one is on Jezebel and Ahab. So there's a lot of links to follow, and that's why you could spend all day there, because I really do like to give as much information as possible without it bogging down the spiel. So you can click on them and go forth and learn. Also, I have a Facebook page, like I mentioned before, Emily L. Pittsford. And that's where I put my French stuff, and like I have books on there that are free to download, and well, just one, not plural. It's about the history of homosexuality. Anyway, I also have a YouTube channel, which is Emily1922, and I would be so honored if you went on there and found my speeches of Take on the World. They say part 1 and part 2. Don't go to the clips that are smaller. Just go down a little bit. It's only like that far down. And you're going to learn a lot about gender confusion, things you would never have learned at church. Trust me, because I am a fringe person. So also I have a Facebook page for parents like my husband and I, and it's called Hope for Christian Parents of LGBTQ Children. The good news is it's secret, so you're anonymous in there. The bad news is it's secret and you can't find it. So I would love for it to grow. If you want a big one, you can go to the Christian one that says, it's a blessing to have a homosexual child. Okay, I'm not going there. Not to say my child and my son. I always have to do different tenses. So my daughter is a blessing. Don't get me wrong. I absolutely adore her. I love her strength. I love everything about her, even the lifestyle she's in right now. This has been the hardest journey, yet the one with the most rewards, because if you had to pick a sin that my daughter would be doing, and it would be the hardest one, it would be this. It's hard to love people that you disagree with so vehemently, yet I would go to those seminars. I went to 6, and I loved every single one of them. I treated them as best I could. I considered it a ministry and would pray for them when I would put the Langlair sign in and stuff. And I loved them. And then they found out who I am. And it wasn't pretty. But I do absolutely adore these women, and I miss them a lot. And whatever it takes, I mean, this could ruin everything, or it could make everything right. So, in the group, to get into the group, because it is hard to find, if you go to the Emily L. Pittsford page, you can message me through there. Please don't do Messenger. I'm kind of blocking that right now, but if you want to go through the Emily L. Pittsford page and like it, and then I can drop you in. Tell me your story, but keep it small. But I know you want to relate. I mean, I've done that too. When I watch people, and it's like, oh my gosh, I could go talk to them. And so I just want to let you know, I might not be responding like I used to, because I have learned that you have to be careful. So there's that, and then also my book. It's called A Most Incredible Witness, and I have an interview on my Emily1922 page with Tom and Jared. I call them Tom and Jerry, but they interviewed me right after Tom was here in this living room, and he interviewed me for a movie, but I got caught, but that's okay. It's still fun having him over. He had my friend in there too, so she's in there. Anyway, but my book is it's a really good story of how the Father took care of us and how he took care of my son, especially in the last few hours of his life, which was just literally incredible. So it's called A Most Incredible Witness. It's on Amazon. You can download it or you can get the book, and I'd be honored. So thank you so much. I hope you learned some things, and I sure enjoyed being able to come into your living room. Hopefully one day we can hug. Thank you.